So we're here at Dr. Weiler's office. We are filming another great episode of the Patty G Show, and we had a little bit of a pivot, so we're actually in his office and not in our studio, so I'm excited to kind of hear about that as I see another name across the wall. We're going to discuss another business and not just your plastic surgery practice. But before we get to that, I want to give a big, wonderful shout-out to the amazing folks that bring you this show each and every week. Horizon Financial Group, Falaya Real Estate, Building 5, Lakeman's Health Center. You know our outfit of the day is brought to you by McClavey Limited and also Mimosa Handcrafted Jewelry. Without further ado, Dr. Weiler, welcome to the show, man.
Well, good. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to hear about your very diverse career path that you got. You know, I'm over here thinking he's just a plastic surgeon, but beforehand you were telling me you have all kinds of different ventures and hands in different things.
Yeah, I've always had a little hand in entrepreneurship, I guess, and always been interested in doing some crazy stuff. My wife gets aggravated with me that I get pulled in too many directions, but I call plastic surgery is more my day job, and I've got a lot of other hobbies on the side.
Look, this show is my hobby on the side, you know?
That's right.
Well, so then for those that may not be aware, man, who are you and what the heck do you do?
Good. So my name is Dr. Jonathan Weiler. I'm primarily a cosmetic or aesthetic plastic surgeon. Based out of Baton Rouge. Grew up in New Orleans, born in D.C., spent most of my life in New Orleans. Did most of my training, so, sort of made my tour of the SEC school, started at Auburn. Don't know why I went there for a year, but really enjoyed myself and didn't do too well, so got pulled back home, ended up at LSU, joined up with my old friends, so I'm an LSU grad. Did a year, got a master's in public health from Tulane.
Okay.
So did a little tour at Tulane. Then went worked for the state in public health for 2 years. I managed a program. That's a whole different conversation. Quite an interesting conversation. It was actually on the comedy show. One of the national. Yeah, it was a big boondoggle. It was pretty funny. But anyway, worked for the state for 2 years and got into medical school.
Okay.
LSU Med School, and then did my general surgery residency at Ochsner. Went back to LSU, did a plastic fellowship there, so plastic surgeon there. And then Katrina happened during my general surgery days. So I sort of, I was always a South Shore guy, New Orleans guy. Decided at that point I wasn't crazy enough to open a business up on the South Shore. And so opened my first practice in Hammond, Louisiana. So my wife is from Mississippi, from a small town. She told me that would probably be a mistake, being a big town kind of guy. And she was probably correct. I really liked it, but I quickly realized that what I wanted to build Hammond wouldn't be large enough. So I started working at the Williamson Cosmetic Center, actually, a little bit. So I had my own practice, and then I had the Williamson Cosmetic Center, and learned a lot there and grew. And then I wanted a little more, too. So I actually started working with a company called Lifestyle Lift.
Okay.
All right. So, which was a national facelift company. It was an entrepreneurial guy that started it, and he had 80 locations. And at one point, they were doing 1/4 of the facelifts in the country.
Holy smokes. And
so they taught me how to do facelifts and all my facial procedures under a local anesthesia. So when you think of a medical procedure or surgery, you think of a tube down the throat, full-on anesthesia, which works fine and is needed for some of the bigger procedures. But the facial procedures, the patients are older, and the risks of the anesthesia are much higher. So their theory was we can do this under local, which means you take an oral pill, you get nice and relaxed, we numb everything up, and we do it. So I learned how to do that, and that was going well, but that company actually went bankrupt, and I learned a lot from that. The guy took out a personal loan from Chase for $25 million. Chase gave him $25 million. Personally. Signed on the dot, no assets, and he ended up going bankrupt.
Wait, no.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This was back in the 2000s, and
okay.
Yeah,
all right. Well, that makes a lot more sense.
This was before the big crash, so they were giving out money left and right.
Yeah, I'm like the CPA in me is
how
in the world?
It was insane. It was insane.
Okay.
So anyway, learned a lot about that, but and then actually broke off from Williamson, and the Lifestyle Lift company went bankrupt, and I realized that I think I can do things better. So I had my practice in Hammond. I opened a practice here in Baton Rouge, sort of on a wing of prayer. And actually, I opened up right before the big flood, a couple of months before the big flood. So I opened up. I didn't see a consult for almost 8 weeks because of the flood. Yeah. So yeah, it can be pretty scary. So opened up the practice here, and I'm a full service. We have our own surgical center and all that. But and then just built it from there. And now, so I still have my original location in Hammond. I have a location here. We're actually doing this in our business office. So I have a full OR. I have 2 other surgeons. So we have 2 locations in Baton Rouge. We have one in the Blue Bonnet Jefferson area. We have one downtown. We have a location in Denham Springs, the original location in Hammond, a location in Covington, a location in Slidell, and we're building a location in Ascension Parish.
So you've got just about all the central part of the state kind of covered.
Yes. And then hope to move into the New Orleans area, Houma kind of area. I kind of look at it as the New Orleans, Baton Rouge market has always been looked at very separately, right? And it's starting to merge, more so than I've ever felt. I feel like services, especially, surgical services, patients are willing to drive about 3 hours. If you look at a LA market, you look at Dallas, you go from one end of the city to the other, it's longer than a commute from Baton Rouge to New Orleans.
Oh, yeah.
So, those sort of ideas of, it's 2 separate markets, and I think those things are sort of getting broken down. The other thing is I built my business. We do a lot of Botox and fillers. So, I don't know how familiar you are with that, but think of it basically as aesthetic procedures where, patients come in and wrinkles and to make you look younger. So I've got 10 nurse practitioners that do that for me. So we sort of built it on, if you call up and you want to come in today and have it done today, we're going to get it done today. We'll find that office for you. The days of, calling the physician's office and saying, hey, I want to come in and telling you, okay, well, you can come in 2 weeks at 3:30. Doesn't work, right? I want it this afternoon, right? So for Botox and fillers, we do that on a, sort of we'll get you the same day appointments. So that's offered at all of our locations. We also do like laser hair removal and a lot of different lasers. And the technology these days, there's machines that melt fat. There's machines that build muscle. So we do a lot of that also these days.
Wait, machines that build muscle.
Yeah,
I've heard of the fat melting, the body sculpt, but I didn't know it builds muscle.
Yeah,
I guess the ab machines.
Yep, there's ab machines. So you put it on, and in 30 minutes, you're doing 20,000 crunches. Crazy, huh?
Smokes.
Yeah. There's a lot of technology is moving, quickly, and it's one of those things I say, you either get on or you get off, right? And if you're not on it, you're going to miss it.
Especially from a business standpoint, if you're not providing your potential customers or clients with this technology they want,
right?
Whatever feeling you have towards technology doesn't matter. But if people are calling you saying, "Hey, do you have this service? Do you have this technology?"
Exactly right.
And you don't want to say no.
Right. And so that really has grown significantly, and the injectable market, which sort of encompasses fillers and Botox, is growing between 20 and 30% per year.
Wow.
Which is crazy, right? That's why you see all these people doing Botox left and right, all these clinics everywhere.
Well, yeah, because you don't have to actually, so what are the parameters to actually provide Botox services?
So you have to be so it differs by state to state. In the state of Louisiana, nurses can do a Botox under the guidance of a physician in their office.
Okay.
They cannot do a filler. A filler is where you add some volume. Botox temporarily paralyzes some muscles and eliminates some wrinkles. Fillers are the things that make a woman's lips look a little bigger. Right?
Gotcha.
And so a nurse cannot do that. So a PA or a nurse practitioner can do that under the guidance of a physician, or physicians can do that also. So it's a large market of who can do these procedures. And so you'll have clinics where a nurse may be providing these services, or a nurse practitioner, or a PA, or even a physician. So, it's a competitive market.
Well, are dentists able to do that?
Dentists are also able to do it, absolutely.
Okay, and they don't even need to like I've heard of people do Botox parties where they'll have people come to their house and get Botox done.
Yeah, as long as you're licensed as a dentist or as a physician or a nurse practitioner, you can go to someone's house and you can administer it in any facility. There are some rules with nurses and PAs about where they can do things like that. But the higher accreditation, like nurse practitioners, docs, dentists, my sister's a dentist. She does a little bit of Botox. But yeah, it's available everywhere. And so that's really, for me, a lot of my sort of, as a plastic surgeon, you're a craftsman, some people say it's an art. I'd say it's more of a craftsman skill. It's, you're really dealing with, measurements and patterns and different things like that. But the problem is that you're only paid for what you do with your hands. You're nothing but a but a very well paid arts, or craftsman guy. And so, in this business, to create a business beyond your own personal back and hands, you've got to get into other sort of interests and other types of businesses. And that's kind of where this kind of all started, I guess.
Well, so to kind of back up a little bit, I want to hear the story about the state job, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that a little later.
It was on the Daily Show, so it was pretty good.
But so in the early days, you had your practice in Hammond, right?
Yes.
And you were working for somebody here in Baton Rouge?
Eventually, yes. So as I originally started, it was just me and one employee.
Okay.
And I took anything that came in the door, trauma, car wrecks, reconstructing faces, breast reconstruction, reattaching. We actually, plastic surgeons do replants, put hands back on and fingers.
Doing those kind of ice chest. Hey, I had a fishing accident. Cut my finger off.
I can tell you some stories. Yep. We'll dig in the garbage and find it for you if we need to. But yeah, so anything that came in the door to just sort of make a living, and then built up a good name and a good patient base, and then realized that I wanted to move more into the aesthetics or the elective stuff, right? The cosmetic stuff, and that's sort of how I got involved with Williamson.
Okay.
Learned a lot from Shelley Williamson. Learned a lot from working there. And then I rolled into the lifestyle lift, and that's where I kind of took a sort of a national sort of perspective of how and that gets more into my Rejuvime story, but how you can take certain aspects of aesthetic or cosmetic medicine national. Mm-hmm. And that was practice. The lifestyle lift guy was offered $500 million for that practice at one point. Yeah, crazy the numbers.
And then he didn't sell it, and he went bankrupt.
He went bankrupt. Yeah. Crazy.
Have you called him and asked him? Does he regret that
He doesn't take my
decision?
calls. We actually tried to do a little bit of a hostile takeover. Me and a group of 10 physicians. We started a whole nother practice. So
he's not going to take your call.
No, he's not going to take my call. He does not like me. So
okay, so as you were saying, you would get paid for the stuff you do with your hands, right? So
Correct.
how are you able to balance all three of those different elements and still run like your own firm, your own practice successfully?
It's tough. So I call it getting to a critical mass. And so, when I first started out, I would stay late. The only thing I didn't do was answer the phone. So I realized if you answer the phone, the first question is, Dr. Weiler, you might not be very busy. You're answering the phone. But I could do everything else. I would clean. I would set up things in the morning. I would show up. I would cut checks at night. I did payroll. I met with my CPA. So, you get to a point, and one of the advantages of quite frankly, of being a plastic surgeon is we get paid well for what we do. And so, I had the advantage of, I have a high dollar per hour income in terms of what I do with my hands, which is great. So I eventually just scrimped and saved, and, I'm not much of a spender on things, and realized, hey, this is what I want to do. And I actually built my first building, unknown to anyone else. I was still working in all these places, and bought it, built it, had it custom built. And they sort of discovered my plan about 2 months before I was opening, which was okay. I was padded up good enough, and then sort of opened up. That's how I kind of started my second practice. But you get to a point where you have enough income where you can start to hire people to do those other jobs, right? Mm-hmm. And so at this point, I have a full-time CEO, HR. I have 4 managing directors that manage all my departments. And so my time spent with them is every other Friday. I take off and I sit down for a full day of meetings with them, and we review everything. And then I'll meet 2 or 3 times a week after hours. My wife hates it, from about 5:30, because I work about 6 to 6, about 5:30 or 6 to about 7. And I sit down with my CEO, review any questions he has, talk about financials, and kind of move from there.
Okay.
So I'm a lot more hands off on the business aspects for my practice than I was early on.
So what did the company say when they found out about your building?
They terminated our relationship. So
like immediately?
Immediately. I'm a surgeon, so we had to finish up what was scheduled.
Right.
And then I had to see my patients that I'd operate on, but I saw them over at my new place. But yeah, it pretty much, when you do something like that, and it wasn't, it happens, and we had tried to make it work at first and form a partnership, but things weren't really going anywhere. So, but it's something, when something like that happens, it terminates your relationship.
Yeah, I imagine so.
Yeah. Sort of like the same reason why the guy that owned Lifestyle Lift will not take my calls, because 10 of us tried to do a sort of a corporate takeover. It didn't work. So,
jeez.
But no risk, no reward, right?
Well, of course. And I guess for you were building your second location at that time. So it's not like you were going all in for the very first time with an entrepreneurial endeavor. It was, okay, we're big enough. The market I know is here.
Correct.
My name is here.
Correct.
People know me. Let me go ahead and just have that natural progression.
Exactly right.
So for some folks, for them to do that shift,
right.
and if they're 3 months out
right.
and they get terminated,
right.
they could find themselves potentially upside down if they didn't save right.
Yes, you're exactly right. Yeah, it's something that, luckily, I'll be honest, my wife is pretty frugal too. And we live a good lifestyle, but it's not like I don't spend every dollar I get. And,
right.
And so we had saved up enough, and so we were kind of prepared for that moment, and we knew we would kind of make it through. Now, it did get a little hairy with the flood, with not seeing a patient for about 2 months, but persevered and made it through, and things kind of took off from there.
So I know she's frugal, but how was your wife whenever you said, hey, I want to kind of start doing this entrepreneurship thing?
She supports me whatever I do. I think she's more concerned about the time away from the family and the time suck than anything else. I think that's what irritates her more. And I am trying, as my life shifts from less surgical and less medicine to more business. I'm trying to restructure my life this fall, because I am taking my other company, which is Rejuvime Medical, and we're hoping to go national with that. So it's taking up more and more of my time. And I think that is something that can really be big. And not saying that Weiler isn't big already, but something that can really go to the next level.
Right.
Something I can really scale to the next level.
Well, I think that part that you mentioned about doing your meetings every other Friday and dedicating that time and kind of blocking it out so people know and expect it can help with that, that at-home time, right?
Oh, yeah.
So for me, it was, when I'm working my normal 9 to 5 as a CPA and then having to do the show afterwards, there were some times where it was like 2-3 times a week I was filming, and my wife was like, all right, this is a big commitment that's currently a hobby for you. Yeah. Like, let's dial it back a bit. Right. And so now I batch it. So it's like, hey, every Tuesday we're going to film, whether it's 1 episode or 4 episodes. If we've got to bulk up, we're going to film Tuesdays, which can be a challenging nightmare sometimes to schedule with people, because they're not flexible, but it's also why we book out 4 months in advance. You know? So that I hear you loud and clear when the wife's like, we love what you do. You're doing a great job. Just we want to see you some more.
Right. It's about being efficient, right? Yeah. And people say I'm one of the most efficient people they've met. It's always funny. My wife always messes with me, because I'll go pick up some groceries on the way home, and I go over to Calvin's, which I live in Bocage, and the manager over there, he tells me, "You're the fastest shopper I've ever seen. I will walk in and be out in less than 3 minutes.
I love it.
I know exactly what I want, right? I'm not going to waste time. I know it, because I got to get home, see my kids, see the wife. So it's about, like you said, stacking, making the best of your time, and being respectful of your time too. Because time it's the world's most expensive commodity, right?
Right, and you can't buy more, I've heard.
And you can't.
Well, you might be able to buy a little bit more on the tail end, but in a day span, you only get so many hours. But and as an entrepreneur, you're kind of forced your hand to figure out more things like that, to figure out how to become more efficient.
Right.
Whether it's, for me, I get up at 4 a.m. and go to the gym because my wife and my kid are still asleep.
Right.
Then I come back and I work for an hour, and I get to wake up my kid, and then I head to the office, and it's figuring out what schedule works best for your specific situation. Is like, you can get done as much as you can, but you're going to have to make some sacrifices somewhere. Right. Whether it's working after they go to sleep, working before they get up. It's like, if you've got to get so many work hours in and still make time for the family, you got to figure something out.
You're right. Man, it's tough.
So we're going to get into Rejuvime.
Sure.
But before we do that, I kind of want to hear about this state story.
So I work for the public health state of Louisiana. And I got put in charge of it was the methylparathion program. And what had happened is there was a guy who would travel from New Orleans to Chicago on a yearly basis, and he would spray methylparathion for pest control. Now, methylparathion was a cotton boll weevil outdoor pesticide. Right. Very effective. Okay. outdoors. Extremely effective indoors. Matter of fact, so effective it would kill rats or anything else, but also dangerous to humans, right? All right. So not approved for indoor use. So what happened is they actually had a child die of methylparathion poisoning. Wow. Went to the hospital, autopsy, and realized they had this very high methylparathion level. And he wasn't a farmer's kid. He was one of the workers' kids. And what was going on? So they investigated, and they found out through taking a detailed history that their house had been sprayed, or the apartment complex was sprayed by a bug man. And who's this bug man? Well, he's a guy comes through once a year. The landlord hires him, comes in and he sprays. What's he spraying? Well, I don't know what he's spraying. Well, they happened to track this guy down. And he kept a very detailed log, actually, of what he was doing.
Well, that's convenient.
Very convenient. And so what happened was the EPA got involved because it was an outdoor pesticide being used indoors that was approved by the EPA for outdoors. So what they did is they discovered this house, and then they completely renovated the entire house. Renovated the entire apartment complex. And they started up a program where they started investigating this guy's logbook. We would go in and we would swipe the baseboards, and they would sample at what level it was at. If it met a certain criteria, the entire place got renovated. All right.
On whose dime?
The federal government, EPA. So quickly, think about this. If your neighbor's house is getting renovated with no penalties for free, what's the next step for you?
You're going to figure out a way to get your house renovated. Right. So then people have got to be buying this stuff and spraying it in their house.
So that's exactly.
I can see where this. I can see where this is going.
What happened? So actually, I don't remember the Daily Show with Jon Stewart. Actually came down and did an episode, and they would send guys in full spacesuits,
right,
to renovate, strip it out, and then bring everything else in new. And they had a crowd outside, and they were interviewing this guy, and they were like, what's going on? He's like, well, they sprayed some kind of bug spray. And they're like, well, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to spray your house? And he started laughing. He's like, hell yeah. So anyway, it became this. They were spending
it on TV.
They were spending $2 million a day.
I don't doubt it.
In renovations.
Well, so were they also giving new furniture?
Everything.
Everything.
The entire house was gutted. Everything was renovated. So it ended up being, it went from reporting. It went from being just being reported to taking swab samples, to then taking blood levels to confirm for renovations. And then they just totally eliminated the program because it was getting out of control. Because people realized and they would actually give their kids this stuff, and make them, swab it and touch it so they could raise those levels. People were crazy. So, it was insane. So they went from, within a 2-year period, it went from this full blown out, by the end of it, $2 million a day was being spent. And I was running the Louisiana part. It was spread from Louisiana to up to Chicago, Illinois, and everywhere in between. So luckily, it kind of coincided with me getting into medical school. So I didn't lose my job; they just phased it out. So
you get phased out.
But yeah, it was Google. It's probably online. Methylparathion Louisiana Daily Show, and it'll come up. It'd be an old archived Daily Show thing, but it's pretty cool.
Man, to be the last person who's tried to get their house renovated and they shut the program down, and then you're stuck with the consequences.
Pretty crazy. Yeah, I was a younger kid. I was in my early 20s, but it was wild to see what was going on.
So then you phased out of that job and went into medical school.
Went to medical school.
So hearing a little bit about your background beforehand,
mm-hmm.
You've got a business-oriented family.
Mm-hmm.
What made you want to just take a complete 180 and go in the other way and go to medical school?
So I always, my mom probably was influential. So my grandfather, who passed away before I really knew him, was a big general surgeon in Omaha, Nebraska. So LSU's defeat last night, unfortunately. But
we got tonight. We got a chance tonight.
Exactly. So, and so she kind of motivated us, and I grew up, and I think everyone in my family is fairly successful. Like I was saying, my brother is a federal judge. My sister's a dentist. My other brother's an anesthesiologist. So it kind of pushed us. And so, I really kind of took to medicine. And then once you get into medical school, you kind of find where you fit in. And I love surgery. I really enjoy working with my hands. I've got a little artistic side to myself. And I also like a little bit of business. And so plastic surgery, as an aesthetic plastic surgeon, lends itself to an entrepreneurial spirit because it's one of the last bastions of sort of you can charge what you want, do what you want, obviously within the medical practice, but the business side is pretty entrepreneurial. So that's kind of what drew me into plastic surgery. That with the art and the hands-on. I could operate all day, every day, and I just love it. Love it.
So before again, we're gonna get to the Rejuvime part, but what is one of the worst experiences of a trauma? Because you said you did trauma in Hammond. What is the worst trauma experience that you've had that you can speak to?
I mean, I've seen it all. I always tell the story of I've had a stripper that ripped off her finger on the pole. Yeah, because her wedding ring was on. Got caught. The whole finger.
Oh,
yeah,
gosh.
And the maintenance lady threw it away. Got to go find it. I've done that.
No.
Yeah.
She just found a finger and just decided, let me throw this in the garbage.
Yes. So we had to go dig it out. I've awful. I always tell the story of a girl jumped off a 4-story building. Yeah, and I mean tons and multiple operations. Chest tubes and just kind of crazy stuff. 14-year-old girl that actually drove one of the trauma surgeons out of trauma surgery going through that experience. Kind of crazy. So. Yeah. And she actually became a plastic surgeon. Yeah. Yeah. Kind of crazy. In Hammond, I've had young kids mauled by dogs or pit bulls, having to reconstruct that. It's awful to see. Right. So you see some pretty awful stuff. In terms of just like visual, physical trauma, right? We do a lot of that. We work with, there's quote unquote trauma surgeons who deal more with the organs and things like that. And as a trauma, reconstructive guy, you deal, you do replants or you cover big injuries with tissues. And so fix a lot of facial fractures and hand stuff. We actually, orthopedics and plastic surgery shares a lot of hand surgery. So that's why we replant fingers. Plastic surgeons did the first kidney transplant. So it's a diverse field. It's an interesting field. So there's a lot of different things that we do. So it lends itself to an entrepreneurial spirit because I do think plastic surgery it's all over the place. All those face transplants you hear about are done by plastic surgeons. So we push the envelope, and I enjoy pushing the envelope in everything I do. Well,
and it's also an extremely kind of risky side of thing as well, which lends more towards entrepreneurs because you're not just doing something so simple as, hanging a door, building a piece of furniture. Like you are reattaching limbs to people and expecting them to work again.
Yes,
they got to work.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And you are, a hero or zero, when
real fast.
If that limb or finger doesn't make it, you look really bad. If it makes it, you look like the hero. If it doesn't last, and there's things that, cause those limbs not to work again. That happens and you look like a zero and,
and it's always coming back on you.
Yep.
Like you are and again, that's why malpractice insurance is so high.
Correct.
Because there's this expectation of, you should be able to fix it. You're a doctor.
Right.
There's no reason why you can't fix it.
We expect perfection in our society these days. And unfortunately, medicine is not perfect. And, it's, heart surgeons and they're going to have a mortality rate. Some patients aren't going to make it through.
Yeah.
When you replant digits and arms, some of them aren't going to work. And it just happens. And you're absolutely right. And people want to hold you accountable, even though you did everything you possibly could. Even in the best situations, some things don't work.
Yeah, and it's either too far gone or there's a whole set of circumstances that have to be factored in whenever you look at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how did you know it was time to start going from 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 practices?
That's a good question. One of it is I found a physician assistant, a lady named Taylor Best. She's been with me for over 12 years. And I was lucky. I was in the halls of Women's Hospital, and somebody came up to me and, "Hey, Dr. Weiler, do you need a physician assistant?" And this was when I just started. I was like, "I don't know if I do." Maybe. And they're like, "Well, hey, I got this friend of mine. She just graduated, and she's amazing." And she gave me her number, and no idea who it was. So I was like, "Okay, yeah." So I called her up. And she said, "Yep, I'm looking for a job. I'd love to come in and work with you for a day. Do a day with you." She came in, and she was amazing. So she joined me, and really between me and her, she's an amazing individual. She started working with me before she got married. So she's been married. She married an ex-LSU football player. She has 4 kids. She still works for me almost full time. She is probably the busiest Botox or filler injector in the state of Louisiana.
Wow.
She's made us the 13th busiest practice in the nation. For fillers and injectables.
Holy smokes.
And she has allowed me to get into that filler and injectable practice almost as a partner. Does that kind of make sense? And I got so busy and she got so busy. I was like, hell, we need another location and we need more of you. And so it just was that sort of leap where, you kind of in business, like I'm sure you know, or the medical practice, you get to a point where you're either one of those people that says, okay, I'm as busy as I want to be and that's it. Or, hey, I'm as busy as I want to be and I keep getting more calls. So let me open another location, right? And I just got to that and it was just a leap of faith. And so I said, hey, let's go open another building.
Well, so were you kind of asking your clients where they were coming from to kind of know where that next location needed to be, or was it let's throw a dart at the wall and see where it sticks?
So it was a little bit of both, but it was primarily I was thinking of. So I think things are like I think why is there a McDonald's every 2 exits, right? And why is there a Ruth Chris just in every major city, right? People consume McDonald's, unfortunately, a lot, right? And so, people are only willing to drive a few miles to go to their McDonald's, but they're willing to drive maybe and wait 40 minutes for a Ruth Chris steak. And so I liken that similar to what we're doing. So I in my mind, fillers and Botox are smaller, more regional, more sort of, you do it a couple times a year. So you want a location that's close to you. You want a provider that you have a relationship with, and you want convenience, but you also want a very quality product. And so I've built the practice based on sort of population centers and accessibility. So, I want to have a quality, top-notch injector in every little metropolitan area in Louisiana. Does that make sense? And then from a surgical standpoint, I know patients, that's not something you do a lot of, right? Hopefully most patients aren't doing a lot of surgery. So, 2 or 3 times in your life, you're willing to get in your car, drive an hour and a half or 2 or 3 hours, sit in the office and wait for a plastic surgeon who hopefully you have a lot of confidence in, and do your big procedure. And sort of I built off that theory of our surgeons are located in Baton Rouge, and then our injectors are at these little offices all throughout the state. And we do go out there and visit for consults, but all of our surgeries are done here.
Okay. So one location for surgery. Gotcha.
Yep. And so everybody drives in here, but all of our other facilities, the other facilities do everything else.
Okay. And that includes the body sculpting and all of that stuff.
Yep.
So let's get into the technology side of things. So I'm sure when you first started, they didn't have near what they have today.
Yes.
How has that kind of shifted in your eyes of the technology, and how has that shifted the procedures you've started to offer?
Sure. I mean, so when I was, it's embarrassing to admit, but when I was in med school, we didn't really text. My first text was during Katrina because you couldn't call.
Yeah.
You had a text.
That's when texting blew up.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? And now I hate to call. I want to text everybody. So I would liken it sort of, I was, right when I started, I was at the cusp of when Botox and fillers, which is the wrinkle reductions and the volumizers were starting. And Botox was the first one. And so, and also physician assistants and nurse practitioners when I was starting were hardly ever seen. They just weren't out there. So, the technology really, it's changed tremendously. I think when you talk to plastic surgeons that have been in practice for 40 years, they, when I was coming through my training, a lot of them did not do Botox or fillers. It didn't have any estheticians or any lasers in their practice. They thought it was crazy. Wouldn't work. We just do surgery. To be successful, you have to, be able to treat everything, right? You want to have all those technologies available. So, since when I started, Botox is new, fillers are new. There were lasers, but most of it was a 6-week recovery with lasers. I was going to say
pretty intense.
Intense lasers, right? And so I've seen the development of these very intense lasers to lasers that are very, very mild, for patients that want them, that have pretty good results. You still need the big daddies, the big intense ones for the really dramatic results. The development of, liposuction started before I started, but going from liposuction to cool sculpting, which is the fat melting or fat freezing. So now there's devices that freeze fat and it dissolves. There's devices that melt fat and it dissolves. There's devices that build muscle. Like I said,
where does the fat go?
So think of a fat it's like a balloon. So it stores liquefied fat, which is very similar to Crisco. It's exactly what Crisco is. And so what happens is when the fat freezes, that cell, it ruptures that outer membrane, that balloon, and that liquid just dissolves, goes into your bloodstream, your liver processes it and excretes it out. Yeah, so it's literally going away, which is crazy, and it works. It's liposuction is still the dominant fat reduction in my mind, but CoolSculpting works very, very well for spot areas. So yeah, I mean the technology, and I mean even it's changed within the last 5 years. The whole muscle building thing is crazy in my mind. That came out about 3 to 4 years ago. Now they just came out with a device that we just got that removes skin without a scar. Yeah, isn't that crazy? So it's actually cutting out skin. The incision is so small that it doesn't scar, but you do that incision 20,000 times, and it removes. So yeah, so it
removes, like when you lose a bunch of weight and a bunch of fat, you got dead skin hanging. That's what it'll go in and cut and remove, scarless.
Yeah, and it just punches it out. So it's actually removing skin.
So the muscle building technology, is it just for abs or is it for other?
So you can apply it calves, biceps, triceps, abs, butts. Big butts are in.
Yeah.
To building butts. Oh yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
That is insane.
Yeah, it really is. The technology and really so. As a plastic surgeon, you've got to go to these meetings just to keep up.
Yeah, you got to go to fairs. You got to go to all these conventions.
Yeah, because
technology.
There's a lot of there's a lot of scammers out there too, right? And I see it all the time with patients that promise results, and there's things that don't deliver, right? Because this equipment, these devices are very expensive.
Yeah,
you can imagine. And then look, what we charge people to use them is, I know it's not cheap, but these devices are the price of a Ferrari. Some of these things. And so, but the technology's there, right? And I always tell patients, if it sounds too good to be true, it typically is.
Right.
But these devices work. Are they as dramatic as I'd like to see them? No. But are they getting there? Yeah. I always tell patients, maybe in 20 years we'll have a box that we walk in, your head sticks out, and you walk out with a new body. That may be coming. Who knows?
That is just insane to think about, though. But it's true. Like technology is getting to that point. Where it gets expensive, but if you have the money, you can make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, as much as technology, just with the iPhone, as we've evolved with the computer in our hands, it's slower, but it's progressing quickly,
very quickly,
and it's pretty amazing. And I don't know how much and this kind of rolls into Rejuvime, but there's a whole new type of medications that allow people to lose weight very safely and very effectively, and it's going to transform the world we live in, quite frankly, in my mind.
So, in going into that with Rejuvime, what is Rejuvime?
What is Rejuvime? So, Rejuvime is a company. So, as a personal story, I sort of went down this road of I had my busy medical practice, 2 young kids. I was involved in this. I was crushed by a truck 6 months after Katrina. Yeah, so I was actually crushed between my truck and a landscaping company truck. Was pinned together. It was outside my fiance's house. I had an old F-150. I was playing hooky from work. The guy I worked for was off that day. And so I was pinned and crushed. Ended up at the hospital I was supposed to be working at Oshner Hospital, which is crazy.
That's embarrassing.
Yeah, it's embarrassing. They called the trauma staff, and then the guy was like, Dr. Weiler is in a trauma. He's down here working? No, he's in here. He got crushed between 2 trucks. What? He's supposed to be working today. No, he wasn't working today.
We're on a lunch break. It was a lunch break.
So I fractured my back. I lost about 2/3 of my colon. Had multiple surgeries. Yeah. So I was out of it. I almost died. So lucky to be alive, knock on wood. But anyway, I had some nutritional deficiencies because I've lost so much of my intestines and some issues. And I was an athlete back in, not a great athlete, but high school football and baseball, played rugby in college. So just wasn't myself. So I went down this road of hormones and saw that hormones were becoming a popular thing, or kind of coming out of the closet, or coming out of from behind the curtains. Plastic surgery has evolved to where people ask, "Hey, where are you getting your Botox?" Or, "Hey, did you have your breast done?" Or, "Hey, did you have your tummy tuck done? Who did it for you?" That's common conversation. 15 years ago, nobody spoke about those kind of things. No. So hormones to me is like that right now. So, hormones is a secret to the anti-aging movement. And so I went down this sort of rabbit hole, and I found a clinic in Florida, and I would say the Florida and the West Coast are 2 main centers of this stuff. And went out there and actually became a patient myself. And then called the clinic up and was like, "Hey man, look, I love this stuff and I want to open a clinic here." And I had 2 partners I originally started it with. We went down there and trained, went to a bunch of meetings, learned all about it. And actually me and Taylor, who was the injector I talked about, we actually started this kind of from ground up from a medical standpoint. And then I kind of started up from a business standpoint. So it came out of a need for me to start it up. But I also realized that, wow, this is a great potential. And the other thing is it actually filled the other half of my building, to be honest with you, too. So I always have a real estate play, too. I do a lot of real estate.
Did you own the building?
Yes, I did own the building.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
So you need another tenant.
Yeah, I need another tenant. So I own all my buildings now because I've gotten into, so that's my other play. But anyway, so I got into it from a personal standpoint. And then we started getting patients in, and I realized, how much of it's something that is just not addressed. As you age, you lose your hormones. No doubt. Women go through menopause. It's dramatic. Men have the same problem. As you age, you lose your testosterone. You lose all that energy. And if we can do procedures to make you look younger, but if you want to feel younger, you got to have that hormone.
Yeah.
So Rejuvime started out of that, and so Rejuvime has grown substantially. We've got we were talking earlier. We've got locations in Baton Rouge, Slidell, New Orleans, Metairie, Shreveport, Houma. We're opening up Gulf Coast next month, and we'll be in Monroe in 2 months. Okay. And that's a business that I can scale because it's nurse practitioner driven.
Okay, so it's got a lot less barrier to entry.
Yeah, a lot less barrier to entry. And now there's been a whole new a whole new family of medications that was developed about 2.5 to 3 years ago. Semaglutides. You may have heard of Ozempic, Mounjaro. You may see those advertisements.
Yep.
So those medications were developed specifically for type 2 diabetes. Okay. And so type 2 diabetes is the non-insulin type of diabetes, right? And so what they do is these companies develop these medications, and they realize by balancing your insulin and glucose levels at a steadier rate, it's a once-a-week injection, that the side effect is weight loss. And not a few pounds, significant weight loss. Okay. On average, between 20 to 30%, not pounds, percent.
Of just weight
body
or
mass
body
of your
fat?
body mass.
Okay.
Okay, so put it in perspective. If you're a 200-pound woman, 30% of that is pretty significant, right?
Yeah.
Talking about over 60 pounds, right? And
over what period of time?
Typically around a year, 6 months to a year.
Okay.
Right. These are medications that are meant for a lifetime, too. They're not like the old weight loss medications, and they're not developed for weight loss either. Remember that. They're developed for insulin control and type 2 diabetes. But the side effect is this. And so one thing you realize about medications is the majority of medications that we use were not developed for the purpose they're being used for. Viagra is a perfect example. Okay. Viagra was developed for cardiac patients. All right. And what happened is the men kept calling for refills. And they were like, why do the men want refills?
Yeah.
They realized, it helps with erections. A lot of blood thinners were developed not for the blood thinning capabilities. A lot of the anxiety medications we use, a lot of these medications, we use them as a side effect. And so this class of medication is really it's going to revolutionize, in my mind, the way we treat patients. Obesity is the largest epidemic in the country, right? Statistics offhand could be anywhere between 60 to 70% of the world of the United States is obese. And obesity, the BMIs it's a tough criteria, right. For a BMI. So obesity is a real epidemic. And, but these days we treat them with gastric sleeves, right? Which are dangerous, invasive. Look, I love a gastric sleeve, but it's a procedure and it doesn't always work that well. You can eat through it. So these medications are revolutionizing, in my opinion, health. And so at Rejuvime, what we've done is we do hormones for both men and women. So I tell patients, if you want to look and feel young and you're 60 years old, but you want to feel like you're 30 years old, you need to have the hormones of a 30-year-old person. And it applies across the board for men and women. Men are mostly testosterone. Women are mostly estrogens, and they also need testosterone and some progesterones. There's a whole host of other things that we can do. We can stimulate growth hormones. We don't do growth hormones, but we can stimulate your natural growth hormones. There's other things we call peptides that we can sort of, really focus in on certain things. And then within the last year, we've combined this with the semaglutides. Combine hormones with these medications that manage your insulin levels better. I mean, we are reshaping people's bodies. We are reshaping their outlook, their and the way they feel. It's been pretty amazing. And it's just exploded. And that's why we're opening up these. And we hope to take Rejuvime. We're working with the same guys that took away the Republic. We're looking to start doing, we call them joint ventures. We're going to start that in the fall and opening up to investors. And I hope to have what I've learned with Lifestyle Lift, which had 80 locations. I think we can easily get to that and even more, and make it more of a, Rejuvime really is it's a name that I made up.
It's genius. It's great. I love it.
And thank you. And I always say the logo was done for $30. I did it online, and but it all kind of fell together.
Fiverr.
Exactly right. And but I feel like the time is right, and it's such a game changer when you combine hormones, you combine the semaglutide type medications, these peptides we can do, and it's really transformative. And it's a great business model also, to tell you the truth, because what I tell investors is that no one's hormone levels go back. Does that make sense? Like once you have high blood pressure, you don't get rid of high blood pressure. You're pretty much on high blood pressure medication your entire life, right? And so it's not something that we can cure. We can't cure the aging process, but we can certainly slow it down, and we can make you feel and look a whole lot better.
Right.
But but that medication, you have to keep using it. And so it's a wonderful business model also.
So you've got these locations that you're anticipating. I'm assuming it has to be inpatient, like you have to come into the office. It almost sounds kind of like a pharmacy to me. Like an over the counter type deal. Like, hey,
no,
doc.
that's the beauty of these medications. So and that's what we've done differently than other. So just like the world of Botox and fillers is, there's a bunch of these types of clinics out there. And what separates us is two things. One, we do the majority of our therapy at home. So we instruct the patient, teach them how to do it. Everything's sent to the house. So it's a very private thing. You don't have to come in every week and get your stuff, right? It's all sent to your house. And then two, we monitor it. So we do all the medical monitoring for it. We do all the lab work for it. And we got a great subscription program for it too. So, we've taken elements of different businesses out there. And it's about, moving medicine to that 21st century, right? People want convenience, they want quality, and they want results. And when you combine those three things, and I learned that at Weiler with Botox and fillers, if you combine those three things, you really have a great company or great product. And, we really focus on customers/patients. We focus on, making this as easy as possible for the patients, doing all their therapy at home, doing it as private as possible, not dragging 100 people through the office, he's on hormones, he's on, it's something that's very private. So it's been very effective.
Well, it is a very private situation because
Yes.
it's weird for people to still have conversations about, I'm on hormone replacement
It's very
therapy.
taboo
Yeah,
still.
it's very taboo. Yeah.
Now, I don't think that it's going to be taboo in 5 years or 10 years. And using these medications, it's interesting because I call it fat shaming. So people are embarrassed to tell other people they're on these medications, right? And they don't, wow, you look so great. Well, they won't tell them, right?
No, just been
working out.
Been cleaner.
Right.
Been cleaner.
And I see a lot of patients in my practice that have lost a lot of weight. And it's always funny when they tell me, I've lost 45 pounds, Dr. Weiler. And I did it the old-fashioned way. Diet and exercise. I didn't use any of those new things people are talking about.
Right. And it's like a competition at that point.
It is. And I always think to myself, well, how did you get here today? Did you walk? No, you drove. You took modern technology to get here, right?
Yeah.
You called somebody up. You made an appointment through an app. So these medications, hormones and hormone replacement and these semaglutides and these Manjaros, they are tools to help us achieve a better life. And I think people look at it incorrectly. Does that make sense? Like almost, I call it fat shaming and embarrassment and things like that, right? Not all, we all, like you said, we all have a very tight schedule. We live a different life. I mean, our kids these days, my parents growing up, things have changed. It's a more difficult existence for children these days. It really is, with the tablets and all that. And so, there's nothing wrong. We have the technology, right? We have the ability to feel better. We have the ability to keep your weight down so you don't have to have blood pressure medications. You don't need that joint replacement, right? You don't have to, be on that CPAP at night. You can take this shot once a week, and you know what it does? It reduces your cravings naturally. It's a healthy thing. Instead of 220 pounds, you're going to be 145 pounds. You're going to feel great. You're going to be able to go to your kids' baseball games, live to see your grandkids, it's not, and people have this sort of, shame sort of, and I want to work, and I know it sounds crazy, but like, I don't tell patients this, but it gets me angry to hear that because we're just using technology to solve a problem, and weight, obesity, it's a problem in the world, especially in the United States.
Yeah,
especially in the
United
United
States. It's a epidemic in the United States.
Yeah, that's crazy,
and it's only in the United States.
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
We created a problem, and now we're like, oh shoot, now we got to solve it.
Exactly right.
How are we going to solve it?
How are we going to solve it? Exactly right. So yeah. Anyway, so Rejuvime to me is that answer, and it's a little bit, maybe a little bit ahead of its time, but I think we're growing into it, and we're really getting to I believe it's this market's going to just explode.
Yeah. Well, and it has the potential as it gets more widely discussed, as it gets more widely accepted as a solution for some of these problems that people are facing.
Yeah.
But you've got to have those conversations. You've got to break the stigma of using medication in these areas.
Correct.
And for some people, it will not only allow them to feel and act younger, it allow them to live a longer life and feel better throughout that life.
Yeah.
It's talking about, their moods, their energy levels. It can be subsidized through some of this stuff and this technology that it's like, why live a miserable life just to say you didn't just because you didn't use it.
Exactly. I mean, so I went to the beach with my daughter. My daughter does dance for a dance competition. And there are people that cannot walk. They may go to the beach, but they don't ever walk on the beach because they're too big. Mm-hmm. Their knees and ankles hurt too much in the sand. And think about that. Think about living a life where you can't go to the beach because you're too big, right? And people look at that as sort of a weakness or what I'm saying. But it's a true problem, and there's nothing wrong with utilizing this tool to achieve that result of just even living. Not only like living longer, living better.
Right.
And you're exactly right with that. So it's sort of a little bit of an irritating point with me, but I think that we hope to break through that with Rejuvime.
Yeah, and I think it's going as widespread as you suggest it's going to be can kind of start helping in doing that.
Absolutely.
And paving the way in. You've got to kind of change how it's marketed, right? You've got to shift the message being delivered. You can't just say, want to lose 10 pounds?
Right.
Come use this.
Exactly right.
Because then people are seeing, oh, you're just a quick fix scheme,
Correct.
And it's like, well, here's everything that's behind it. Here's the technology behind it. Here's how we do this scientific research and studies, and here X, Y, and Z. You've got to kind of paint the picture every time somebody reads it instead of just having the ad that says, ask your doctor about XYZ medication.
You're right.
Because then you get that stigma too. Well, I have to ask a doctor about what medication I should take.
Right. And you'd be surprised about how many patients come in and they're afraid to have these discussions with their personal physician about hormones, sexual health issues. They won't tell their physician that they have, if they've gone through menopause and they have sexual dysfunction issues, or if they're a man and they have erectile issues. And we get that because for some reason, I feel like maybe patients feel more open if they're actually paying for it. Because, we don't take any insurance. We're a cash pay business. And it's sort of that people know that we're open to this and we're all about improving your life, not just, we're not just sort of reacting to problems. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. We're not just fixing problems. We're trying to avoid problems and improve the quality of your life. And so, and I think there's that diversion in medicine kind of going on, which is where you got, traditional medicine, and then you're going to have this sort of, anti-aging sort of movement, sort of, functional improvement, quality of life sort of treatments. And that goes very well with plastic surgery too.
Yeah, no, it's like two business models that kind of go hand in hand, and it's, to me, I'm like, okay, yeah, this makes complete sense that Dr. Weiler would do this.
Yes, well, thank you. I'm not crazy.
You're not crazy. So to round things off with your real estate side of things, you kind of hinted at kind of what you do, and I'm very familiar with the model. But so what is your kind of real estate avenue?
So first, when I first got into it, I had some very good advice from a guy I trained under, and he said, "Where are you going?" I'm like, "Well, I'm going to open a practice in Hammond." He's like, "Well, have you bought it yet?" I'm like, "Bought it?" He's like, "Well, yeah. Well, how long are you going to be there?" I'm like, "Well, I probably won't ever leave it, I guess." He's like, "Well, then you'd be an idiot not to buy it." Well, I didn't have the cash to buy anything, so I ended up having this horrible landlord who actually, it's a whole nother story, but who literally took down my sign on the front of the building. Yeah, oh yeah. And then on Saturday evening, stole it.
Were you not paying rent?
No, I was paying rent, but the sign, it wasn't approved through his It was a perfectly fine sign, but it wasn't approved through his primary sign person, but he was out of town. And,
which is probably a company he owned.
Yeah, exactly right. So anyway, but I understood that at that point. I was like, well, it makes perfect sense. So anyway, I ended up, when I built my building here in Baton Rouge, I saw the sort of the aha moment of, wow, this is, pretty lucrative, and wow, no offense to contractors, but this isn't anything. This is not CPA level stuff. These guys, they work hard, but it's not rocket science. It certainly ain't brain surgery. So we have gotten into, I've got a development company, construction company. My CEO has his contractor's license, and we have our own contracting company too. So I own all the buildings that we're in currently and did not build this one, but we are building our next building personally.
Well, when you get to the point where you're expanding so rapidly, you have to have a construction side of your company.
Correct.
Because, again, us as entrepreneurs, we kind of don't like to rely on a whole lot of other people to get our business going. And we're very turned off when somebody delays some part of our business because they either had another job or they're doing X, Y, and Z. If we're not their biggest client or customer, we're just gonna be like, okay, great, we're gonna go make our own. And that's the worst part.
I'm gonna do it myself.
The worst part is having a very entrepreneurial business owner sit down with a contractor for the first time and being the contractor, because you're like, well, they could just. Yeah. I'm gonna show them plans and renderings, and they're gonna go, great, you did that work. I'll cut you a check for this. I'm building it myself.
And that's kind of where it's gone. We got lucky. I've worked with some great contractors, but sort of seeing the inside of it, and it's one of those things where, like, well, exactly like you said, I'm frustrated with the time. I'm frustrated with sort of some of the mysteries they hide, and we're going to do this ourselves and hopefully do it better. And so we'll be building our newest building, which we should start within the month on the construction, and then hope to do some development of some medical complexes in the future as sort of the anchor tenant, whether it's Rejuvime or Weiler. There's some locations around the state that, having have all these locations, you realize there's a real need in this location for medical sort of, medical offices, all medical office space. And so I've kind of got a few locations in the state where we hope to move in and do some land development. So that's another thing we're getting into.
You're also a tenant, so you know the language. You know what is needed within a medical building that's not needed in a general office space.
Correct. And I do find, I've built my own surgical center, and I built multiple offices, and, I say time and time, it's just not that complicated as some people think it is or make it. And there's a real need for, as medicine continually expands for more medical space. And I was just reading a blog, got sent to my phone about, medical REITs and things like that. So it's an interesting space to be in. And I think that's an area, especially in this current environment, with interest rates, and where medical developments is a tried and true, sort of investment. So we're moving into that space too, which is my wife's not too happy about that either, but just more time.
Yeah.
But all these companies, Rejuvime, I've got a great partner, Chris Pixley, who's my CEO. I've got a great CEO here. And then we're going to have a great CEO with the development company too. So
it's all about building that team too.
It's about the team. You're exactly right. It's about sharing those responsibilities, trusting those individuals, empowering them, and paying them well. Yeah. I've done well with that model with my nurse practitioners, my other surgeons, and it's worked well for me.
Yeah, and it's going to continue working well, I'm
Hopefully.
sure.
Hopefully.
Unless you take out a personal loan for $25 million with no asset.
That would be a mistake. I don't think they do those things anymore.
No. A lot more due diligence, a lot more underwriting.
Exactly right. Those were good times, though, probably.
Oh, yeah. So, we could go on for hours, but kind of to start winding down the show, we have a set list of questions we like to ask every guest. The first one being, what is something you did as a kid you wish you could still do today?
Play baseball. I wish I could still go out there and play. I loved it was my first love, and you hit 50, and I don't want to play softball. I want to play baseball. And I just, I don't have that opportunity anymore. But I would tell you just off the top of my head, that's something I really loved.
I think as you get older, the joints are a little bit more prone to
just,
strain, and then you're in a boot, and then it's just a whole different ball game.
Yeah, I've learned my lesson. Look, and I played rugby in college, and it wears on me, and I've got other issues going on too. But I would be a fool if I went out there and tried to do any sort of organized.
See, this is why I like golf.
There you go.
Get a much longer timeline in which you can play that sport.
Exactly right. Mm-hmm.
So you are in a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You've got several different business ventures, several different avenues in which you as an entrepreneur have kind of thrived. What are 3 lessons you have learned along the course of your career?
I'd say, just kind of what I was saying before. Number 1, be able to say no and value your time. It's really important to protect and disconnect, So on the weekends, I disconnect, put my phone aside, and probably infuriate some people, but I may answer some stuff Sunday night, but it's usually Monday morning, kind of panic of starting to answer stuff. So, protect my time. I think, value your employees. I pride myself on, we have very little turnover in any of my businesses. I can count on one hand the amount of employees that have left and not returned. I've had multiple employees think there's other and actually come and ask for their job back. And most of them we hire back again if they left in a proper fashion. That doesn't happen a lot, but, really value your employees. That would be the 2 things. The third thing, what I've learned, or
just lessons you've learned.
Don't be afraid of risk.
That's a good one.
You've got to just do it. You got to just jump into it. So many people talk and dream about it, but just don't do it. You've got to just get in there and figure it out.
Yeah, and be okay with making those
failures.
mistakes. You're going to have so many failures.
You don't want to know how much. My wife doesn't want to know how much money I've lost in failed entities.
Yeah.
In things that I put money in and never went anywhere. I mean, I've started companies and filmed commercials, and I put a lot, and boom, failed. And a lot of that I just learned is, don't be afraid of risk because it's going to fail. Things are going to fail, and there's nothing wrong with that. And honestly, Rejuvime, it sputtered, and it took us really 4 or 5 years to really kind of get it going until we got it, and then the last 4 years has just exploded, and you have to prepare for those moments of explosion. And it's very evident in my surgical practice or my aesthetic practice. We make, in terms of our injectables, I wouldn't say 90%, but 75% of our money, our profit, in 10% of the time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
In those super rush times, and it's, I'll never forget, like my wife, she always told me the story. Remember when the popcorn, the gourmet popcorn phrase was really big a couple years ago, right? Mm-hmm. My wife it was Christmas Eve, and she was in a popcorn store, and she was trying to buy popcorn, and the woman was just irate. She said she was yelling at the customers, just, why is everybody in waiting to Christmas Eve to buy popcorn? Like, because you're in the business of selling popcorn. That's stupid.
That's why we're here.
That's why we're here. It's a holiday kind of thing, right? I mean, nobody buys popcorn on a random August. It's a Christmas Eve kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And so it's knowing your market, right? Like you got to be staffed for those surges, right? And so, but really not being afraid of risk, I'm not a huge gambler, but I'm risky in my life, I guess I would say.
You like to be risky when you can be the house.
Yeah, exactly. And so, you got to find what you're good at and be willing to make some big bets.
Yeah.
And I think that's what separates, a true entrepreneur or somebody who can really kind of achieve. I mean, I love Elon Musk, just listening to him, whether you love him or hate him, the way he lives his life. And, he's opening these companies where he thinks he's going to have a 90% failure rate. He's like, well, the odds of, I think, when I started, SpaceX of actually being successful were 5%, and I'm like, God, that's crazy, and he invested his entire fortunes from PayPal, in those companies. And look where he is now. And whether you agree with what he's done, I mean, he has changed the world.
He's built an empire.
Yeah, he's built an empire and he's molding the world. So I don't think I'm ever going to do that. But I think not being afraid of risk and taking that leap and just do it. You've got to take that step. And so many people just don't do that for multiple reasons. And some of it may be, they can't, and I'm not, and for multiple reasons, but if you have that opportunity, you got to take it. And if you miss it, then it may never come back again.
Yeah. You only get so many chances at kind of catching lightning in a bottle.
Exactly right.
So what is something that you love about Baton Rouge?
Oh, that's a good one. I love the sort of LSU centric sort of, especially watching the game last night in the game. It was just, it's exciting to be there. I love LSU football. I love the growth of Baton Rouge. To me, I agree with you. We were talking earlier. I think it's an area with a lot of opportunity, of Baton Rouge. And to me, it's an exciting city to be in. I think it's something that's changing, that's constantly redefining itself. Growing up in New Orleans is pretty defined, right? And it is what it is, but exactly what is Baton Rouge, I'm not really sure, to be honest with you. I know it's change. I think it changes constantly. I think it's evolving. I think it's growing. I think it's exciting to be a part of.
Yeah,
that's what I love Baton Rouge.
Yeah, we got a lot coming our way.
Yeah,
a lot of potential that's starting to unfold over the years, which is exciting.
Yeah, it is. It's an exciting place to be. It is.
So for the final question, what can I do to help you?
That's a good question. I don't know. We just met. I'm sure I may lean on you for some introductions.
You provided some air conditioning for us tonight, so that's delightful.
I would tell you offhand. People always accuse me of dragging my feet. I don't like to answer things if I don't know. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah.
I would say to be determined. I think you could probably help me out greatly in some fashion in the future. Obviously, you've got a ton of connections through your business dealings and through the show. You've looking at your site. You've headed on to close to 200 of these, getting close.
We'll be at 200 at the end of the year.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, you taking the time to interview people and have these discussions is pretty amazing and pretty cool, I think. And I'm sure you personally have developed a wealth of knowledge of what to do and what not to do. I'm sure you've sat down with some people and been like, I don't know about that. I'm sure you've sat down with some people and been, wow, like blowing your mind. Like whether or not they're successful at the time you talk to them, this person's going to explode, right?
Look, this is a very selfish endeavor just so I can educate myself.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's what sitting here thinking, I probably at some point in the future, I'll lean on you for a connection or some advice, because I'm sure you've seen and talked a lot, help me out in that regards, to tell you the truth. That would be my answer for that one.
Well, that's good, man. Look, if I can help, I will definitely do what I can.
Well, I appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate you, Dr. Weiler, for coming on the show and offering your amazing, great office space for us here, as we had some no air conditioning in the studio today. And
it was a hot one today. So.
And we film in South Louisiana, y'all. It was hot. It was hot.
You're not kidding. Thank goodness for AC, right?
Yeah. But thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you for coming on the show. And thank you, everybody else, for watching or listening, whatever form or platform you're consuming us on. I greatly appreciate it. I know the guests do as well. We're getting there, y'all. I think this is 174, 175. I'm not very sure. It'll be in the title and all that stuff. But y'all make sure that y'all subscribe, y'all like, and y'all share the show. It's kind of how we continue to grow and continue to have great guests on like Dr. Weiler and get to have these amazing stories. And if you're in the market in Baton Rouge or any one of his other locations and you're looking for their services, we're going to link all of their websites and everything that they do. So reach out to them and, make sure that you let them know that the Patty G Show sent you. And a big, wonderful thank you to the amazing sponsors that bring you the show each and every week. We're going to hear a little bit more about each of them right now.
Welcome to the brand new Filia mobile app. We took all the same tech that's helped hundreds of people sell their homes themselves and packed it into an easy-to-use app for your phone. When you download the Filia mobile app on either the Apple or Android App Store, you'll immediately be able to see the power of this game-changing tool. From the seller's dashboard, you can navigate to all the information that you need. We intentionally separated everything into key groups, such as tasks to be completed, buyer leads for your listing, and contact information for everyone involved through closing. When you get an offer on your property, you can simply review and respond all within the app. No matter where you are in the world, you'll be able to monitor everything that's going on with your property from listed to sold. It's truly the power of Falaya in the palm of your hand. Download the app and see for yourself. Falaya, it's real estate reimagined.
Thank you so very much to Building 5 for becoming the latest sponsor of the Patty G Show. We are going to be filming once a month at Building 5. We're going to post about it on our social so you can come and visit with us. Building 5 is an excellent food establishment if you're into sharing boards and really getting a creative menu. Misty and Brumby have done an excellent job of creating an environment that's warm, welcoming, and inviting for every single occasion. Go on over to Building 5 in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and tell them that the Patty G Show sent you.
Imagine taxiing on a plane looking toward the end of the runway. It seems so far away, it's even hard to see it. And that's what the concept of retirement probably felt like when you were in your 20s, 30s, and 40s, way far in the distance, not visible or even a concern. But as you turn 50, something happens. Retirement suddenly seems like something real, something not too far away. In your 50s, you are rolling down the runway. Retirement is getting closer and closer, faster and faster, weeks and months zipping by. But are you even ready for a successful takeoff to retirement? Fear not, there's still runway left. But the time is now. Time to make progress and time to get a plan. The Runway Decade will help you get organized, get energized, and give you the direction you need to take off to your desired retirement. The Runway Decade, building a pre-retirement flight plan in your 50s.
Thank you to Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge for making this show possible. Nick Pentis is a past guest. We love having him on. Listening to him talk about the culture they have over at Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge is really an incredible thing to hear. How they treat not only their employees, but every customer that walks through the door. You are more than just a number to them. They're going to give you that white glove concierge service every step of the way. They're going to make you feel like family and take what can be a stressful time in people's life, shopping for a car. They're going to make it so enjoyable and so pleasurable. You're going to want to go back there time and time again for every new vehicle. Thank you so very much for Mercedes-Benz of making this show possible. Thank you to our wonderful sponsor, Lake Men's Health Center with Our Lady of the Lake Physicians Group. Guys, I know it's tough to get out and go to the doctor. I know it's challenging to find time in our busy days, but I promise you, signing up to be a part of this group with Dr. Curtis Chastain and Dr. Tyler Boudreau, you won't regret it for several reasons, but most of those being the fact of the time it saves, where you're able to get in on the same day, get that appointment done, and spend that time you need to talk with them about what your health goals and concerns are, as well as ensuring that the financial investments you have, you will be able to live out and see those come to fruition. So if you're an investing guy, you know all about and planning for the future and investing in the future. There's no other more important thing to invest in than your health. Make sure you go check them out, Our Lady of the Lake Physicians Group Men's Health Center, and tell them Patty G sent you. McClavy's Limited, a proud sponsor of the Patty G Show, has been serving the Baton Rouge area proudly for 40-plus years. Gentlemen and ladies, if you're shopping for your man, there is no other place in the Baton Rouge area to get your clothing, whether it's game day needs, everyday needs, business attire, formal attire, whatever you want. Go over there, see Frank and Ashley. It's a father-daughter duo. They do incredible things in their store. They will outfit you from as simply a shirt that you need for one evening or all the way to a full wardrobe overhaul. They're going to take care of you every step of the way, and be sure and let them know that Patty G Show sent you. The Patty G Show is proudly brought to you by Mimosa Handcrafted Jewelry. Mimosa Handcrafted Jewelry is a local business right here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. They create handcrafted jewelry for everyday use, that special occasion, whatever it may be. Gentlemen, they've got amazing jewelry both for male and female. Everyone is our audience. You know, after years of experimenting with everything from ceramic jewelry, glass beads, and enamel, they've settled in on the ancient art of lost wax casting is their main form of creating their work. They cast everything in bronze, sterling silver, and 14-karat gold. Every step of the way is done here right in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Proud sponsors of the Patty G Show. Mimosa Handcrafted Jewelers. Get out there and tell them that Patty G sent you, and they're going to take great care of you on your next order.